journey started in an interesting manner because I've been very healthy all my life and never really thought a lot about being critically ill. But unfortunately, I did something foolish and wrenched my back one night and thought I had either hurt something or ruptured a disc. So next day I went to the doctor. They did an MRI and they called me that evening, which was kind of odd, but they wanted me to come in the next day to talk about the results. So I spent the night worrying about how I was going to fit surgery into my really busy life. And when I came in the next day, the doctor met with me. Thank goodness she called me in rather than tell me over the phone. But she announced that I had lung cancer, and they had discovered it in my lung, my bones, and my liver. And it was a devastating announcement because that was the furthest thing from my mind. So my life just kind of went over the cliff all of a sudden. But it took a little bit of getting my feet on the ground, and then fortunately she had all the things in place. The doctor I should go to, the appointments I needed to make, the further testing. So that was really a gift to me. There were a lot of gifts that came out of a really tragic circumstance. But after going to her, I went straight to my oncologist, and he started all the big tests to see where else it was, what had happened. And that's when the miracle started happening, because I truly am a miracle and I know it. And my oncologist even says that, because there's no really good explanation of how I could have survived at the point at which they discovered it. It had spread so intensively that they knew they weren't going to do surgery. But the first good news was when I was in the hospital trying to figure out where it was and what it was doing. They looked at my liver first because they couldn't decide whether to do a test in my lungs or my liver, because liver's kind of risky. So they were debating and debating. They finally said, okay, we'll do an ultrasound of the liver. So they did that, and that was such a gift because it was not in my liver. It was cysts that they had seen rather than tumors. So we were kind of, as my husband said, oh good, we're on the uphill side of it rather than the downhill. So we immediately went into what are we going to do next, and the oncologist suggested chemo. There was a brand new chemotherapy out for lung cancer. Lung cancer has very few treatments. That's why very few people survive it. But the treatment started. I was doing chemo every other week, and chemo is about the hardest thing you will ever do in your life. It just strips you of everything to the point where you can't even think. But I also knew that it was working and it was doing good things. So at the beginning of that summer, they were not sure I was going to survive the summer, but as the summer went on, I got more and more tired and more drained, but I also had more and more good news because everything started to stabilize and I was getting better and better. So I was on chemo, I did radiology on my hip because my hip was almost destroyed from the cancer that was there. So I was in a wheelchair all summer. I spent my summer working and being wheeled around by all my friends, and that was another gift. I could not believe how many people came together to take care of me and pray for me and lift me up. It was just an amazing fact. It was very humbling to have that many people just drop everything and take care of me and take me to treatments and look out for my family and just do all kinds of wonderful things. So that was the start of the journey, and by that September I'd finished my chemo, I'd finished radiation, and I was kind of slowly making my way back to being able to do things in a normal manner. It took me quite a while to get my thinking back in order because it really scrambles your brain sometimes, and because it was such heavy chemo, it scrambled it quite a bit. So it probably was a year or two before I thought, I can really think straight now and remember some things, although that's still a little bit sketchy. So by the time I'd finished chemo, there was a new drug on the market that had just been released by FDA for lung cancer, and also another blessing, I was one of the few people that it worked for. So I started on that drug, and it was supposed to give you 8 months to a year. So here we are 8 years later, and I'm still getting around. Not quite the same, but I'm doing fairly well. All of this experience has done for me is really strengthened my faith and realize how important God is in my life and how He will take care of everything. Do your homework and research and know what's out there. Right after I was diagnosed, about a year later, they started to get into tumor testing. Of course, I have a lot of people I know that deal with lung cancer too. You just get in that circle, fortunately, because you can help each other out. But I'm amazed at how little people know about things and how they don't do enough research to find out what's going on. And that's just critical, particularly with lung cancer. There's so little research and so little about it. You really have got to push to find out what's going on. So I'm one of those people that have never smoked and has always been healthy. And of course they weren't looking for lung cancer because of that. So I think the most important thing is assemble a team. Be sure you just trust your doctors implicitly and you know they know what they're doing. But also you need to be savvy and do your homework and research. You want it all gone when you first hear it, because you don't want to think that you might have cancer and then it might stay there. But you come to live with having it just still and not going anywhere. So I'm dealing with that right now. But life is great. I've gotten to see weddings and grandchildren and all kinds of wonderful